In the last video on this topic, I basically said the solution to inconsistency is not to be more consistent, it's to be more adaptive. But if you already are adaptive and you're still finding difficulty being consistent, there is another possible culprit. That is what I will share with you today, alongside some potential fixes. Keep in mind that these tips did work for me, but you may need something different. That is up to your own judgment. Hello everyone, my name is Achax, and this is why you're still inconsistent in Valorant. Let's get started. There is a difference between potential and demonstrated skill. Potential skill is what you are capable of, and demonstrated skill is what you actually exhibit in your gameplay at any given moment. Let's take a minute to consider those days where you do everything right and your gameplay feels awesome. Players always say, "I was having a good day," as if it is somehow outside the range of what they are capable of on a regular basis, but that doesn't really make sense. It's impossible to accomplish something that you are incapable of doing. Those amazing games happen when your demonstrated skill is very close to your potential skill. Very rarely will players output all of their potential skill. Many factors can detract from it in some way. For example, if you only sleep 4 hours and are very tired, your reaction time will be way slower and your movements may be sluggish. As a result, you lose many fights and play terribly. Your potential skill is still exactly the same as it was when you sleep your usual 8 hours, but the amount you demonstrate is way less. Players are often inconsistent because they have a lot of variation in the factors that determine demonstrated skill. Oftentimes, this is because they view something as static when it actually isn't. Focus is a good example of this. Many people think of focus as this bottomless energy source, when in my experience, it definitely isn't. Focus decreases over time slowly and recharges quickly. As a result, players find a lot of success in early games, but if they queue into more games in a row, they start to lose focus. This corresponds to decreased reaction time and poor decision making, leading to a dramatic fall in demonstrated skill. As a result, they go from very skillful to absolute trash in a matter of a few hours. The solution to this is simple. Take breaks to allow your focus to recharge. If you can, do this in between games. 5-ish minutes is usually enough, but I typically wait until I feel focused to re-queue. If you find yourself losing focus mid-game, take a moment to walk around or close your eyes instead of watching your teammates play. It is very important that you don't focus on something else when recharging. Scrolling on your phone or watching YouTube as a break won't help much. To recharge quickly, close your eyes and maybe listen to music. Breaks are also nice because they can help reset stress and whatnot in between games. Another good example of something that looks static but isn't is resolve. Resolve is firm determination to do something, especially if it runs counter to immediate gratification. For huge moral decisions and things like that, it doesn't necessarily fluctuate much, but it makes sense that level of determination is inversely proportional to how tired you are for seemingly inconsequential things. Think about it this way. Are you more likely to put off a project and watch Netflix instead at 10 a.m. with a full stomach and a refreshing night of sleep, or at 11 p.m. after a long day of classes and tests followed by a lengthy sports practice? As energy is expended, resolve for small decisions decreases, and in turn decision-making quality can decrease too. This leads to plummeting demonstrated skill, which in turn can cause inconsistency in gameplay. The solution is to not play when you're exhausted. I've tried taking breaks the same way I do to recharge focus and it helps, but it seems to have less of an effect for resolve. Perhaps even more impactful than resolve is patience. Players tend to use a label of either patient or impatient as a blanket assessment of behavior, but most people will become more frustrated with more instances of an annoying event. Are you more likely to be frustrated the first time you are sprayed down by an Odin through smoke, or the 4th time in a row in that same game? Probably the 4th time. Patience is potentially the most important factor because becoming frustrated can lead a player to become rather hot-headed and prone to overextension and attempting to use brute force instead of their brain. Since frustration can rise and fall in pulses rather than steady declines like focus and resolve, patience can be extremely volatile, resulting in sharp fluctuations to demonstrated skill and massive inconsistencies in performance. One solution is to learn how to accept and move past frustrating events in Valorant and to view them in a pragmatic instead of emotional light. I will link my videos on dealing with avoiding tilt in the description in case you wish to pursue these topics further. Aim can also fluctuate more than you might think. Players are in the habit of labeling their aim as good or bad, but this actually changes a lot depending on what the brain thinks it's supposed to be doing. I'm not a neuroscientist, so this explanation is from my personal experiences as a player and not a scientific explanation of how brains work. Let's say you just cooked lunch and now it's time to play Valorant. If you sit down and cue in immediately, your brain is still figuring out how to do cooking tasks because that's what it was just doing. If you hop right into aiming, the brain is going to be distracted. You have to sort of acclimate it to the new task at hand and say, look, I know we were just cooking, but now it's time to play Valorant. Try to figure out how to do the Valorant tasks, not the cooking ones. To do this, you feed your brain a little bit of the new task to get it to switch tracks. Hence, warming up is super important in Valorant to acclimate your brain to focusing on aiming instead of homework or painting or whatever. This one's kind of obvious, but changing your sensitivity and resolution, at least in terms of screen ratios, can have a massive impact on demonstrated skill. I often see players who do this because they see an immediate increase in skill, but this may be something of a placebo. Changing settings has a similar effect to using a really small crosshair in that it forces your brain to concentrate. This can increase focus and therefore improve reaction time and decision making. However, changing sensitivity and resolution can also inhibit long-term potential skill and muscle memory. This can cause massive fluctuations in demonstrated skill and ultimately lead to inconsistency. The solution is to find a sense and res that work for you and stick with them unless you have a good reason to change them. Confidence is one factor whose impact on demonstrated skill many players tragically underestimate. A lack of confidence or nervousness or fear or whatever you want to call it has a direct effect on your body. It can make your hands shaky or your palms sweaty. It can lead to adrenaline, and it can cloud your thinking. Players who don't have consistent confidence can have their belief in their abilities for the match be set by the outcome of a few early encounters which are essentially random. By this I mean the order of success and failure can be slightly randomized, especially in the early parts of competitive games, since you don't know enough about your opponents to dependably outplay them. Yet, losing a couple early fights can lead a player to decide that they are worse than opponents, causing nerves and all the associated ill effects, and ultimately decreasing demonstrated skill. Fluctuating confidence can cause inconsistency as a result. I don't have the space to detail the solution here, so I will have to make another video on how to counter this. Sleep, focus, resolve, patience, aim, settings, and confidence are the 7 most common and influential factors that impact demonstrated skill outside of standard gameplay in my experience. The bottom line is that if you're having a bad time with one of these, it may be better to temporarily avoid competitive mode so that you don't tack on some nasty losses to your record, which don't represent your actual potential skill. I hope you found some value in this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Best of luck and have a great day.